Gentlemen of the press, good morning. With just over a year in office, the Prime Minister has been conspicuous by his absence, which was made worse when he left the country for a 21-day vacation. This was not a good time for a holiday. It was a time of unprecedented crime levels, with homicides to date at 33, exceeding that of 2016. The level of crime in the country is very worrying and requires urgent action by the government. The St. Lucia Labour Party, unlike the UWP, in no way wishes to politicize the issue of crime. However, the government has to re-examine its policies and its impact on the sudden increase in the incidence of deviant behavior and crime in our society. Earlier this year, hundreds of St. Lucians lost their jobs due to the termination of the NICE program. The government's response was callous and indifferent. The ranks of the employed were recently increased by the closure of Radio St. Lucia and a deep sense of despair created by the proposed closure of several other statutory boards. Hence, the government is viewed as unfair and uncaring when they decided to fund a foreign private entity, OJ Labs, to the tune of millions of dollars, in addition to the payment of salaries to their workers. As a government, the SLP would be of a different orientation, protecting existing jobs and assisting St. Lucian entrepreneurs in starting their own businesses. The economy of St. Lucia is in a comatose state. People are clearly feeling the pinch of an economy hurting from ill-conceived policies of this UWP administration. The government's recent policy to increase the excise tax of fuel from $2.50 to $4, a 60% increase, is already causing hardship for consumers. After criticism from the St. Lucia Labour Party about the harmful impact of the policy, the government, in a knee-jerk response, capped the fuel price at $12.75 per gallon. With the imported cost of fuel on the rise and fuel capped at $12.75, the government's projected revenue is already not being realized. Incidentally, had the government not increased the excise duty on fuel, gasoline and diesel would be $10.19 instead of $11.69, and gasoline would be $11.29 instead of $12.75. Gasoline would be $1.46 cheaper to the consumer and the fishermen of the country had the government not increased the excise tax. It is no wonder that the economy is in a comatose state, given that every job-creating initiative of the last Labour Party administration has been stopped by this government. The shock to Grocery Highway and repairs to secondary roads, which should have started employing hundreds of construction workers, has been abandoned. The construction of the administrative complex in Viewfort and the Suffrage Square, both abandoned, dashing the hopes of scores of construction workers. They have frustrated the wind farm renewable energy project in Dennery, a project that offered an opportunity to reduce our fuel imports and lower electricity bills to households in the Dennery area, not to mention the effect of reducing the country's carbon footprint. The UWP government has heartlessly sacrificed the livelihood of many St. Lucians in a pursuit of vindictive and myopic political agenda. A St. Lucia Labour Party in office will never engage in selfishness, childishness, and vindictiveness at the expense of the welfare of the people of the country. As if the economic challenges of ordinary St. Lucians were not enough, the country was faced with an embarrassing allegation about a minister of government who was subject to a search by law enforcement officers at a local airport. Although the Commissioner of Police, a national security minister, denied publicly that the minister was under investigation, he tendered his resignation almost immediately after. The St. Lucia Labour Party calls on the Prime Minister to provide some clarity regarding the circumstances surrounding the minister's resignation. It is abundantly clear that there is no coordinated and purposeful approach by the UWP to the management of the country. On the one hand, they promote investment, but that investment is funded by the sale of solution passports at a cheap price. Our country is at a standstill. The government is preoccupied with promoting the selfish interests of its inner ring of friends and supporters at the expense of the majority. We call on the government to take positive steps to halt the decay, disillusionment, and violence that is gripping our country. The people are indeed crying, but the government is not listening. The St. Lucia Labour Party calls on the Prime Minister to do something now or face the consequences of a desperate and suffering people. I thank you.